Hi there, my name is Moray and welcome to Moray's Muse, an anti-AI generated history channel. Me and camera person Gigi are here to deliver you a varied selection of history content. Today we are talking about the 1954 Hague Convention and how it protects artifacts in war zones today. The discussions around artifacts are just important as the history that they came from. We've made quite a few videos on the British Museum, the Rosetta Stone. Last week we did repatriation, right? And the reason I created this video is because the pyramids in Sudan are in trouble and it breaks my heart. Modern day museums, I personally feel, should be doing a lot more work trying to protect artifacts in war zones rather than just preserving their own collections. So that's why I started to write this video. Before we talk about artifacts that are in danger, we need to talk about the 1954 Hague Convention. The 1954 Hague Convention for the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict, along with its two protocols, stands as the cornerstone of international humanitarian law dedicated to protecting artifacts. This convention was born after World War II. Established safeguarding artifacts in times of war. The foundational principles of safeguarding include defining cultural property broadly and introducing protective emblems. And despite the convention being set in stone, it's faced a lot of challenges. The conflicts happening in Gaza, Sudan, and Ukraine show the convention's limitations, but also its strengths. And that's heartbreaking to say, you know, because real people are being affected, but it does show us how much this convention can do in regards to protective measures. What is happening in Gaza, Ukraine, and Sudan is absolutely devastating. And what's even more devastating is that cultural property and artifacts are being targeted. They're being targeted. Whilst museums, such as the British Museum, see themselves as stewards of cultural heritage, it's real archaeologists that put themselves in danger. Take, for example, Khalid al-Assad. And this one breaks my heart. The archaeologist who refused to give ISIS property, and he passed away. So the 1954 Hague Convention started after World War II. Because of this conflict, we saw looting like never before. And we have the Hague Conventions of 1899 and 1907 who made a little bit of groundwork, but they didn't have the specific focus and comprehensive scope that the 1954 one does. The preamble of the convention explicitly acknowledges the grave damage of artifact and cultural property and expresses concern over the grave danger of modern day warfare on cultural property. There is a pattern that has been observed, and it's one that the laws for the damage of cultural property are really reactive rather than proactive. So these laws are created after these artifacts have been damaged rather than they are laws that try and stop the damaging of property when warfare is raging. We can see this quote: "Damage to cultural property belonging to any people whatsoever means damage to all of cultural heritage of all mankind." This is a universalist perspective that elevates cultural heritage protection beyond national or bilateral concerns. Any damage to cultural property is damage to all of mankind, and we lose knowledge along with it. This foundational belief is crucial for mobilizing all of the world. Have any of you guys seen Monuments Men? Monuments Men inspired Article 7, which mandates that state parties develop specialist personnel within their armed forces to secure cultural property. The 1945 Hague Convention defines cultural property as movable or immovable property of great importance to the cultural heritage of every people. It's a very broad definition that has a wide array of assets. It's really, really broad. You know, you've got art, architecture, manuscripts, books, statues, buildings, any building that is there to house exhibits or artifacts. And it's meant to be inclusive and protect the broad heritage of people's countries, because culture comes in every form, right? However, because the term is so broad, its effectiveness can be limited. Within the convention, there are two obligations for state parties. Number one is safeguarding cultural property during peacetime. And number 2 is showing respect for it during conflict. States are obligated to prepare for war during peacetime by taking appropriate measures for cultural property in their own territory. Preparing emergency responses, preparing inventories, protection against fire is listed, and designating competent authorities to oversee these procedures during peacetime. So, very robust preparation. During armed conflict, state parties must refrain from any use of cultural property or planning wars around it. They must also refrain from any act of hostility, and states are obligated to protect against vandalism or pillage or misappropriation of property. And obviously, states are obligated to have armed forces who protect the property, which is where I will be if I get called up. Let's talk about the protocols that strengthen these conventions. The first convention in 1954. In 1999, the convention got a second protocol. There was a lot of implementation in this protocol because of what was happening in Yugoslavia, and the conflict in Yugoslavia revealed how much work the convention needed. It revealed a significant disregard for international humanitarian law. So the 1999 convention touches on more protocols, more preparation. However, the convention has received a lot of challenges. A significant point of contention has been the military necessity clause, and there is a waiver in the convention for exceptional cases of unavoidable military necessity. Quite a broad thing, this waiver is, and therefore countries have abused it. However, the 1999 protocol does address this waiver that was quite broad. Obviously, this UN convention hasn't been used. The convention's provisions, whilst with good intentions, haven't always been used. We can see this in Yugoslavia. Sometimes legal obligation and practical implementation are two different things. And critics have said that the biggest problem about this convention is that these rules are written by legal advisors and people who work in heritage rather than people in the army. For example, the United States, who was involved in drafting this convention, didn't get involved in its ratification until 2009 due to issues arising from the Cold War. And there's a huge lack of knowledge of these Hague rules. Many armed forces are just not aware of it. Also, the prosecution of cultural property is a really, really hard one to get through because of the lack of willingness with each state to actually implement this convention. And the ICC is a bit wary of it. A lot of destruction goes unpunished. You know, modern warfare involves non-state on state conflict. It's really complicated, and that makes it hard for the application of the 1954 Hague Convention because of the complexities in modern warfare. Let's talk about how the convention has fared in modern conflicts of the 2020s. This is not a very nice conversation, we gotta have it. Let's talk about Israel and Gaza. The Israeli invasion of the Gaza Strip has involved so much damage. Culturally significant buildings have gone, libraries, museums have gone, and other repositories of knowledge and tangible cultural heritage is gone. By January 2025, 70% of the buildings in Gaza were gone. 1.9 million people have been displaced, and the impact on cultural heritage has been immense. Religious sites have been particularly impacted. 79% of mosques were gone. Even the Church of St. Porphyrius. Gaza's oldest church was hit by an airstrike. Israel's university has been damaged beyond compare. Over 3,000 artifacts have been looted from its museum before its eventual destruction. The widespread damage has led to some to call it cultural genocide, as well as actual genocide, which is what it is. And South Africa included the cultural genocide as evidence in its case against Israel, the International Court of Justice. 37 sites within Gaza are protected under Protocol 1 of the Geneva Convention. However, the scale of destruction, what is happening in Gaza, highlights how little international law can actually do. The ongoing conflict in Sudan has inflicted severe damage on its cultural heritage, including archaeological sites, museums, and warring parties have not applied the 1954 convention to the way they treat their warfare. The looting of artifacts across the country has been described as devastating, and it is systematic destruction that deprives Sudanese people of their history. Key institutions in Khartoum have been heavily impacted. The biggest problem in Sudan right now with protecting the cultural heritage is the logistical challenges: shortage of qualified personnel, no adequate communication infrastructure, and insufficient funding. However, the Sudanese people are doing their best despite this horrible, vile time. The National Corporation for Antiquities and Museums have created emergency response workshops, and in Sudan, local expertise is trying to lead the wheel. In Ukraine, UNESCO has listed that 501 sites have been damaged. These include 151 religious sites, 262 buildings of historical or artistic interest, 34 museums, 33 monuments, 18 libraries, and 1 archive. 2 archaeological sites too. Cultural heritage is a huge target in Ukraine, and Russian forces have used these cultural sites as places to host war. Bases, warehouses, shelters. And the Russians have allegedly removed many artifacts in Melitopol. Scythian gold artifacts are gone. In Crimea, 1,000 Ukrainian sites have been added to Russia's international heritage list. What's mine is mine, what's yours is mine. Ukraine has a very robust legal framework because of what's happening. Cultural heritage is a big part of their law in regards to warfare. The Ministry of Culture and Strategic Communications has shifted its primary mission, including the evacuation of cultural artifacts. And this movement has been named as the biggest movement of cultural artifacts since World War II. So they're really steadfast on protecting their culture, which is beautiful. Gaza have no resources to do that kind of stuff, neither do Sudan. UNESCO is actively conducting research into the amount of damage into Ukrainian cultural property. The 1954 Hague Convention is very used in Ukraine. In conclusion, the 1954 Hague Convention is very well drafted. You know, it has a second protocol in 1999, but differing countries have countries under war only have so many resources, and whether the 1954 convention and whether the convention is used, it really does depend, because at the end of the day, these are countries under war. There is a long way to go for all countries to achieve the 1954 Hague Convention. Thank you for this video. Bye.